Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Business Regeneration and Planning Overview Committee. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Start with the general. This meeting is being recorded and is also being live streamed. So could we ask everybody please to turn off their mobile phones? Thank you very much indeed for that. Some housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill, but if one sounds, please evacuate the building as quickly and as calmly as possible. Please use the stairs and not the lifts. Once outside of the building, please gather in front of the Lloyds Bank opposite side of the road. Exit by the door from which you came in, or those clearly marked with the fire exit signs. If you require any assistance, please raise your hand and an officer will help you. Please may I remind public speakers they should keep to their points relevant to the agenda and they will be allowed to speak. I thank you. We have two apologies, one from Councillor Colin Cape, who's unfortunately taken ill, and one from Councillor Chris Wilson, who has a previous appointment. Thank you very much. Item 3, we have the minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 7th of July. Can I please have a approver, please? Thank you, Councillor Brown, and the seconder, Councillor Hartshorn. Thank you very much indeed. I will sign those off. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest that are not already registered in the agenda? Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my declaration of interest won't be up to date at the moment due to change of employment.
Okay, has that been registered at the moment?
It's being registered, yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we please make note of that? Thank you. Public consultation, item 5. I believe we have one speaker who wishes regards to Mr. Smith, Peter Smith, with relevance to item 8. Is that correct? If we can then delay that until item 8 comes up, if that's okay with yourself? Okay. If we can delay that until item 8 actually on the agenda, and then you could raise the issue. Is that okay with yourself? That's fine. No problems. We'll do that then. Thank you very much indeed. Item 6, questions of Cabinet. Unfortunately, we haven't got any Cabinet members to hand. What we'll quite happily do is take down any questions that any member might wish to raise and forward those to the appropriate Cabinet member. Do we have any questions from the floor, please? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you, Chair. It's most unsatisfactory not having someone to ask questions to, because obviously you then can't do a follow-up. But a couple of things that have come up recently I did want to ask the Cabinet about. On planning, the boundary review has come out and the council suggestions have, and from that it tends to imply there's more housing in Weddington proposed than is actually visible at the moment. Can I ask the Cabinet member Richard Smith, Councillor Smith, to confirm why Weddington's being proposed to have 9% less than the average ward size, because from the document and the map it looks like that can only be because they're planning more housing on the other side of the railway line. So if we have some clarity on the boundary review. Second point is, I don't know if Councillor Smith's going to the Borough Plan Working Party, so it might be better to ask him about the housing numbers on that when he can reply. And for Councillor Wilson, obviously over the weekend it broke about the Bedworth Regeneration plan, and from my understanding that is totally unfunded at the moment, and it would be really useful if Councillor Wilson can give us a statement so we're not continuously accused of misrepresenting what's going on in terms of the Regeneration Bedworth funding, because as I can see it, the replacement for all the buildings being demolished would have to be paid for out of the housing that was being built, and that simply doesn't look like it's going to work in any sensible economic fashion. So if we could ask Councillor Wilson to give us a statement about the transforming the Bedworth regeneration, that would be useful. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Condracourt. If we could make note of that, please, and we'll get answers back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, Councillor Phillips.
Sorry, thanks, Keith. Can I ask that information is actually fed back to all members of the panel, please? Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Councillor Evans.
Building on to Councillor Kondakar's point in his request for information, could information also be presented to the committee and circulated to members and put into the public domain on the subsidies that were given to the Civic Hall since 2010, from every financial year since? And can a detailed plan of what refurbishment works are needed for the Civic Hall be put into the committee's domain?
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. I appreciate that's a very poignant question at this moment in time. And yes, we will ask the questions, please. I do believe that figures are being put together as we speak effectively from the Finance Department. So hopefully we should see those in the not too distant future, and we'll ensure they get passed around within the committee, etc., so we can review them. Thank you very much indeed. Is there any other speaker from the floor? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Item 7, the PSPOs. We have a representation here from Abdul Malik. If you could please continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so there's a report that we've just brought forward in terms of updating the panel on the public space protection orders, so PSPOs as we call them. There are a number that have now quite recently been embedded and implemented. So in total at the moment, the report outlines 4, which are kind of alcohol consumption in public spaces, which are where there's an aspect of antisocial behaviour, the use of psychoactive substances, novel psychoactive substances, where there's antisocial behaviour, begging. One slight correction probably in the report is where it outlines their town centre begging. The actual PSPO is borough-wide. It's not just limited to the town centre. And then highway vehicle sales, which is picked up by another team, not my team, but Rachel Fleeson's team, but that's included because we've kind of worked on that collaboratively. So what we've got is attachments that outline the nature of the actual PSPOs, and really today is about kind of asking the panel what kind of frequency they would like updates be brought to them on the effectiveness on those orders. They've recently been embedded, so we're at kind of the early stages in terms of communicating them, working with partners. Generally, the police will probably be the key enforcement agency, working with them in terms of training. The whole back office function is now in place when FPNs are issued, etc., etc. So at a very early stage with the PSPOs, and they are having, I think at this stage, some kind of indirect benefits as they've gone in and that information has been communicated on the ground, and they will be a lever for us and the police to use going forward, especially probably in the next few months as we move towards Christmas. But initially, the kind of anecdotal feedback has been quite good in terms of how the police and departments internally have kind of engaged with people on the ground as we move forward through kind of more kind of maybe robust enforcement.
Thank you very much for that, Malik. Indeed, appreciate that. Questions from the floor? Thank you. Councillor Condacourt.
First thing to say is the sales of cars has been very successful at PCSO. We don't have them all littered around Eastborough Way and people coming and servicing them, and they've just vanished. So that has been a very successful one. On the antipsychoactive substances, reading it seems to have a typo because it seems to have pasted the bit about alcohol in the fixed penalty notices and offenders section. So the bottom of page 20 seems to be all about alcohol when it's not actually an alcohol one. So I don't know if this is actually the version that's been signed and if we've actually signed it with this mistake, but it might be useful to check that. And also, in terms of reporting, there's been various things said about this part of town, by the fountain has all sorts of antisocial behaviour. When we get a feedback on these, do we actually get people logging so many in Abbey Street, so many in Bedworth, to give us an idea of both the location of where alcohol and psychoactive substances are being used, and also the time of day? Is it a daytime activity? I mean, when we get a lot of, on the other committee that does police reports, there's usually some nice graphs, and that does give you an idea of what's going on. So having these PCSOs without actually logging when they're being effective is losing us valuable information. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure we can take that on board. Good. Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, I think sort of Councillor Kandaka has already alluded to this. I'm just confused as to whether or not the psychoactive substances PSPO is actually been approved yet, because I haven't seen the copy of the one with the common seal stamped on. But if it is in place, I wanted to know what is actually being done to enforce it, because you can quite easily go onto council car parks on a Monday morning and all you see is hundreds of the mini cylinders over the car parks. We know that council car parks, particularly in the more remote locations, semi-rural areas, are basically a hotbed for people to go and use in order to discreetly take psychoactive substances. So I'd just be interested in what plans we have in place, either now or upon approval, to actually put a stop to this. I mean, I know the car parks that are owned, well, not owned, but managed through the Parks Department are closed off at a certain time in the day, and I'm sure that's probably more to do with Gypsy Traveller community. But yeah, just what we're going to do to enforce it, Abu.
Yeah, it's a very valid point, and it's a kind of quite a complicated area. And I was in meetings just this week where even the use of nitrous oxide, that is changing quite quickly, the types, the size, and where it's being sold. What we'll be looking to do is working with SNT to target certain areas, and working particularly with our open spaces team, using kind of some of the Nomad CCTV that we've got, and other ways and other measures. But it's not going to be easy at all. And we've been speaking to community safety leads in other areas, because other parts of the county are having very, very similar issues, and certain areas are being hit quite hard. Additionally, what we're doing is we've been quite proactive with other teams at the county council and internally, in schools, in key locations, because a lot of the use is by young people, and also working with the county council and trading standards as to maybe some of the locations where this is being sold as well, and trying to target it that way. So there's a multitude of things happening, but this, together with challenges, particularly with kind of vaping materials as well, are new areas and are novel areas that we're kind of having to work and think outside the box a little bit to address. But those points are absolutely valid.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at what we're being asked to consider here, it's clear that some of these PSPOs have been very successful, and there's others where it's an emerging picture, isn't it? So, I mean, what I would suggest when in reference to item 2 is that we have effectively an annual update on the strategy as a whole, but where additional evidence emerges or we see a picture of deteriorating behaviour, then the reports are brought to us on a more frequent basis, and we're alerted to this, so we can look into it further and determine whether further measures are required, which gives some flexibility to how we approach this, so that we're not taking reports as a matter of routine that are adding no value, but we still allow ourselves to be informed about an emerging picture and take more frequent reports on the items that we feel are more important or are developing, as it were. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for that. What I would suggest as well, if we, as you suggested, that we go for an annual report, but also I think in between time that a briefing note would be an advantage to ourselves so that we can actually just see in general what's happening, which particular PSPO is being more effective or less effective. And if we need to scrutinise that particular area, we can then bring it forward rather than wait for 12 months until we get a full report. Everybody happy with that? Councillor Condacor?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. One thing that wasn't answered was Councillor Evans' question as to whether the psychoactive one is in place yet. And we've also then got the issue that they'll eventually lapse. So I think we need to not make the mistake of, in the annual report, should actually include how long they've got still to run, so we actually renew them in time.
Yeah, I think we'll take that on board. Yes, Councillor Morton, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, could I just ask a question, whether there's any prospect of including other issues into these orders? I have no idea whether they've had success throughout the country with other issues. For example, gangs of pedal cycles riding through town, terrorising, that sort of thing. I mean, is there anything else that's bubbling under as a possibility, do you think?
Thank you, Councillor Morrow. Malik?
Yeah, yeah, it's a valid point. I think what we're wary of is we've had a glut of PSPOs, obviously, that we've brought forward. Then it's also being able to kind of ensure that there's that confidence amongst agencies and reassurance for the public that we can enforce against these. So, as a case in point, the psychoactive substances, and particularly nitrous oxide at the moment, but there's other ones that are emerging, is you will see clusters of those. It's working with partners in the police to be able to catch the individuals and that use and making sure that it falls within the parameters of the PSPO. So it's something that we can look at, but sometimes there's other tools, particularly for that example that's cited, that might be a little bit better, because we're wary of having lots of PSPOs that look good on paper but aren't really enforceable, or the capacity isn't there to enforce against them.
Yes, I appreciate that. I mean, as with anything, if we have too many protection orders, we have to police them effectively, don't we? And then gather the information. And we all know the more laws you bring in that involve police or any other community, as it were, it's very, very difficult to police them effectively. Just one question. With the psychoactive substances, am I correct in saying that they're not illegal?
No, not necessarily. So our focus is where those substances are used and it causes antisocial behaviour. So as an example, sometimes where people are stopped with nitrous oxide, they'll be saying, well, they're going to be using it for a party or for helium balloons, etc., etc. But it's for the judgment, particularly the police officers, to say, well, based on the numbers that they have, or maybe how that group is operating or those individuals are operating, how they deal with them at that time.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on something Councillor Morton's just raised. Just want to clarify that we are open to further PSPOs if and when another issue emerges that we feel is necessary. I just want to clarify that. We are? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Malik, for your presentation. Appreciate it. Thanking you. We move forward to item number 8, which is the Integrated Performance Report for the 4th quarter. And we have Steve Gore presenting, correct?
That's correct.
Are you with us, Steve?
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
am, Chair, thank you.
I'll let you carry on.
Thank you. I'll get straight into the summary for the latest quarter. I've got a couple of points to raise on content, specifically relating to Appendix B, the Strategic Risk Register, but I'll pick those up as I go through. So for the first quarter 2022-23, Appendix A, performance linked to finance. There's no finance data available for the first quarter due to ongoing issues with staff turnover and recruitment. On a positive note, I've got a meeting next week to discuss the finance information for the second quarter, so I'm hopeful it will be available then. So as it stands, Appendix A shows that of the six performance measures, 3 have improved and 3 declined. The declined measures are Bedworth Market Stall occupancy, Nuneaton Town Centre footfall, and the average time to process planning applications. So going on to Appendix B, the Strategic Risk Register, can I refer the panel to page 44 of the agenda? I'll give you a few seconds to find that. So in relation to the Strategic Risk Register, on the last round of OSPs, a couple of queries were raised. One related to could risk be identified in order of importance. So what we've done is arrange the risks in the register in order of net, red, amber and green. Net meaning given the mitigations that we've put in place. So you can see that with the red bar on this sheet, it shows the net risk. They all follow, then any ambers, then any greens. The second point raised was regarding the number of abbreviations used. So because of the length of the document, we're trying to minimize the amount of narrative. So the obvious solution to us, or the most practical solution, was to include the full description when it's first mentioned, then followed by the abbreviation. As you can see in the mitigation control existing ongoing column, the first one, for instance, West Midlands Combined Authority, WMCA. The only exceptions to those, that formula are in the last column, risk owner, portfolio and OSP, where it shows the owner, the portfolio and the relevant scrutiny panel. And the other exception is in the mitigation owner column where a director is mentioned. Because of the number of times a director is mentioned, it's more practical just to leave those. So as regards the Strategic Risk Register Appendix B, the risks are now tailored specifically for the panel rather than the whole document. So Appendix B shows a summary for the complete register, followed by a summary and details of the risks within the remit of the panel. And that means that this panel has 3 within its remit, and at the end of the first quarter, 1 is net red, 1 is net amber, and 1 is net green. So the key changes for the risks within the remit of the panel this time were R4 economic vibrancy. Updates have been made to existing mitigations relating to the use of the Levelling Up Fund and Sport England funding. And a planned action has been added regarding the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. R6, arson and accidental fire. An existing mitigation has been added in relation to external consultancy support to manage fire safety issues. And R8, failure to deliver the key elements of the corporate plan. This has been updated to reflect the new corporate plan, Building a Better Borough, and specific comments relating to the previous plan, Delivering Our Future, have been deleted. Appendix C, which is the Strategic Performance Report Executive Summary, shows that 9 of the measures are green, 2 are amber and 4 are red. The amber and red measures shown under areas for improvement are processing of new benefits claims, working days lost to short-term sickness absence, short-term return to work interview compliance, agency staff spend, building a better borough monitoring, and health and safety monitoring. Appendix D shows the Freedom of Information and Environmental Information Request summary, and that shows that 176 were received, 174 completed, 34 were late, that is over 20 days, and 2 were outstanding. And finally, Appendix E, the complaint summary, shows that 279 were received, 270 completed, 79 were late, that's over 10 days in relation to complaints, and 9 were outstanding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve, for that, indeed. Can I open questions to the floor? Oh, sorry, yes. Mr. Smith, you have time to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on Appendix A. Obviously, it's a very serious concern. I've just got various concerns me and a few other people have put together. I don't know what Mr. Gore was asked to provide. But there's no information or in-depth risk assessment on finance. There is absolutely no information on financial dealings of the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. The accounts are now 6 months late. Why? With tens of millions of pounds of public money being moved through the council to private companies with no accountability or transparency, no progress reports to the public whose money this is, council are giving out to Transforming Nuneaton and its partners 60 million so far. On looking through the council meeting programme, all financial and reporting of what is happening in the finance department and where our money is being spent, these meetings are all secret affairs. Why is that? This chamber is for the people to scrutinise the council's decisions and financial dealings, not some secret society. I will remind the councillors that although the police refuse to investigate the workings of this council, that does not mean the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth cannot do their own investigating. And taking those findings to the court of the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth, because we have not sworn an oath of secrecy or silence, unlike, as it is apparent, many of the councillors here have. 70% of Nuneaton and Bedworth did not want either Labour or Conservative, but had no other alternative. But they now are quickly learning that they are the alternative, because they have the power to remove you at the next election, if not before. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. In the majority of what you've just spoken about, your reference is to finance. This is not a finance over-screws committee. This is business, regeneration and planning. We do have a finance OSP committee, for which, in all fairness, Can you turn your mic off for a second, please? Thank you. In all fairness, your questions should be directed at that OSP committee, not this particular committee. Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yes, on a point of clarification, could I ask Mr. Smith, you said in your statement that the council hives off tens of millions of pounds to private companies. So just to clarify, that is what you said. And you are aware that if the council transfers money to companies, that has to be included in the council statement of accounts that have to be published every financial year. And are you aware of your rights as a taxpayer of the borough under the Local Government Accountability Act of 2014 to submit an objection to the statement of accounts, which I believe Councillor Kandaka has done at some point in the distant past? Are you aware of that? And you say that our financial meetings are held in secret. We have a committee called the Audit Committee, and the role of the Audit Committee is to scrutinise how we spend our money, how we invest our money, and if you have a legitimate concern about where we have put money to a company or to a pension scheme or whatever, that's the committee that you bring it to, and that's the purpose of the Audit Committee. All I can say is that if the allegations that you're trying to make out are true, that is corruption, and it is something that the police would investigate and take action against, because that is of a criminal nature. And obviously, if the police have refused to investigate, it means that you don't have any evidence. But if you do have evidence, I would strongly encourage you to submit an objection to those statement of accounts under your rights as per the Local Government Accountability Act of 2014.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Do you have any more to say? Any other further question?
The purpose of the police, yeah, is to protect you lot from us when we find out how much you've stolen, yeah? It's no good coming to the police, is it? Let's be right, yeah? We've got ex-policemen in here, yeah? We've got the leader of the council who works at the courts, yeah? Councillors on the Crime Commissioners Board, yeah? Where can the people go, eh? Without your influence. Okay, thanks.
I believe Councillor Evans has given you an opportunity and an avenue in which you can raise your concerns. Councillor Evans?
One more point. You ask what organisation you can go to. Well, it's something called the Local Government Ombudsman. So if you feel that we have made a wrong decision and we haven't responded to that correctly, and you know you are legitimately concerned about it, you go to the Local Government Ombudsman. That's why it's there. And if the Ombudsman were to agree with your findings, then you know we could potentially be fined financially as a council. But there are endless amounts of avenues that you can go through. You mentioned the courts. Yeah, you probably could go through the courts if you've got some sort of evidence. But if you don't present it to us as a council, then we can't really respond, can we?
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Phillips?
Oh, sorry, mate.
Ah, right. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Going back to what Steve was saying earlier, that he's having a meeting next week. Can we have the figures sent out to the scrutiny panel that are missing in the report tonight, please?
Okay. Steve, are you still with us?
I am, Chair, yeah. I'm not sure whether I can get the first quarter information. I'm looking at the second quarter information, but I can ask the question. I'm hopeful of getting the second quarter information, but as I say, I will ask the question.
Is that okay for you, Councillor Phillips? Yes, that's fine. Thank you indeed. Any other questions for Steve? Yes, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, on a separate matter, we've referenced page 33, the Nuneaton Town Centre footfall. As I understand it, this information is taken from some sort of tech software, which, quite honestly, I'm not a tech person, so wouldn't know how it works, but it takes into account how people use their mobile phones in town centres, and that's how we get the data. I understand we have the same software in Bedworth Town Centre, and just wondered why the Bedworth data doesn't get shared in these reports. It's just Nuneaton. Because I understand there's 9 sensors in Bedworth Town Centre. I might be wrong on that, but so yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Actual fact, that's a note I had put down myself, to be fair. There is no data listed here for Bedworth Town Centre footfall. So it's very difficult when we're looking at, we have, you know, it's suggesting here in the report, Steve, that the Bedworth market stalls are down, Nuneaton footfall is down, car parks are up, but Nuneaton market is up. So there's a bit of a mixed figures here that's difficult to appreciate and understand. As I say, particularly as Councillor Evans suggested or said, as I was going, there's no footfall measures for Bedworth Town Centre. Could you answer that one, please, Steve? If you're going to enlighten us at all, thank you.
Yeah, I can actually answer that question. The information is there. It's actually included in the narrative, in the comments field. I think you referred to page 34, was it, of the agenda? And that says, let's see. Yeah, the data at the end of the first quarter 22-23 available from GEO Sense, which is the technology relating to Bedworth Town Centre, is 209,175, against a profile target of 275,000. If you're saying that you would prefer to see that in the column alongside, you know, I can arrange for that to be, you know, Nuneaton and Bedworth in the columns alongside, so you don't have to pick it out from the narrative.
Yeah, I think that's opinion from the floor here. It would be nice to see them as a separate or side by side, so we could actually side by side in the same format.
Yeah, I can sort that, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor.
Thank you. I was around when the geosensing was purchased, and I think it might be very useful for Jonathan White to actually come and give us a bit of an update on it, because it was actually a very good idea, but it's probably a bit dated now, where you have 9 locations which actually detect how many people are going by their signals on their phone, mostly the Wi-Fi, etc. And you can actually hopefully see which bits of the town are buzzing and which bits are down. I think the idea when they put it in was actually to see, like Abbey Street, which is quieter, is that getting better or worse? So there's a lot of graphs he could make to see different bits of town, different times of day. And the idea was that if we like put on children's entertainment on Saturdays, you could measure that you had more people in Saturdays at 7, 11 in the morning, whatever. So I think there's a lot of data there, and we're only getting the absolute headline. And I think we would really understand the problems we've got in our town centres if we actually saw good news and bad news about where people were going. I'm really concerned about our town centres, and the data we've got is only till June here, and the loss of the Abbey Street car park has been absolutely catastrophic. Because a lot of people will be now, who don't like the multi-stories, will be going out to the Asda's and the Sainsbury's car parks, and then they won't necessarily be crossing the ring road to go in. So I think this also helps why we need to know some of the footfall data to see where the flows are going. And we get a misleading report on here because we put the car parking for an hour up from £1 to £1.50. Obviously for 3 hours it's gone down, but some idea if we could get Jonathan in to tell us what the 1 hour parking is, the 2 hours and the 3 hours, it would give us an idea of where we're going and what's happening to our town centres. And it's also important to know what the ticket take is on, like, is it the ones at the back of the co-op, Dugdale's, those Victoria Street, yeah. They're absolutely appalling. I've been into town this week and the car park was flooded last night in large parts. It's a total state, and if that's where we're expecting people to go from Abbey Street to go into these little alternative car parks if they don't want to go to a multi-storey, we really need to invest in them and spend a little bit of our money, at least sweeping the gravel and filling the potholes in. You know, we should do a mystery shopper, because you get people from out of town come to Nuneaton for the first time, follow the signs of the car parks, end up in somewhere like Victoria Street and say they'll never come again. So I think we need to solve some of these problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. So what I gather is 2 specific areas you're looking at. One is a little bit more detail regarding to the footfall, etc., in terms of areas within town and say, days of the week, etc., so we can see trends rather than just an overall picture. And then secondly, obviously, about the car park itself. Victoria Street, did you say?
As an example, that is one where people might go instead of the closed car park, because obviously all our data just ends in June, just before the car park's closed, and we really need to understand what damage that has done to footfall and to the businesses, and also how we can improve it, you know, if it's lighting or signage, because people are giving me negative feedback about going into Nuneaton, particularly in the evenings. So I think that's a big area we should, as a committee, be looking at, particularly as we should have the data soon.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacor. So, Steve, if you can take that on board in terms of information regarding to footfall, etc., and give us a bit more detail on the presentation for us, please. Appreciate that. And also use of car parks, particularly Victoria Street, for example, and where alternate car parks are that are being used as opposed to the Abbey Street. If you can do that for us, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that, Chair. But I would like to reiterate, when the report is issued, which is normally 2 weeks prior to the meeting, that if the panel could review the information, they could always get a relevant. That will give plenty of time for if they do that as soon as possible, that'll give plenty of time to get a manager here to answer the questions. Because my role is specifically to pull the information together. I endeavour to get suitable commentary to answer issues, but if that's not the case, you do have the option of inviting an officer to attend to answer specific questions, bring trend information, and they obviously got more detail of the areas than I would have. But yeah, I will take on board all of those questions and go away and sort them.
Thank you, that's Steve. Yes, if we could then, obviously, if you do have any questions relating to the integrated performance reports, once you receive them via email, if you could forward those to me directly, I'll look at those, review them, and then we can invite, as per Steve says, a director to suit to give us an answer on any specifics. Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, if we're moving on to the risk register now, I believe we've got Dawn Dawson on the line to help us as well, because there's quite a few things here about on the risks. I mean, it'd be nice if risk 4 would actually start to be split up into separate risks, because it's umpteen pages. We should have a 4A, 4B, 4C for Abbey Street, Vicarage Street, Bedworth, etc., because it's got out of hand, risk 4. It is now far too long. But it'd be useful to know, like on the Abbey Street, have we actually got any money for phase 2? Because we're doing phase 1, which is the hotel, but it's sort of been spun that, oh, and then we go on to phase 2. But it'd be nice to know where we are with like negotiating a hotel operator, having an idea of the costs, and seeing if phase 2 is actually happening. So I don't know if we can have some feedback on that first.
Thank you, Councillor. Dawn, are you with us?
I am, Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. If you could please enlighten us as per Councillor Condacor's questions, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, certainly. In terms of what Councillor Condacor has just said, that the risk is about economic vibrancy of the town centre. What I believe Councillor Condacor is asking for is risks around different regeneration and transformation projects. I think they're two different things that are being asked for there.
I'm getting a nod from Councillor Condacor, I think. Bear with me. Councillor Condacor.
I'm trying to see how risky things are going ahead, so it's all semantics, but if we could have an update as to whether it's now low risk because it's all getting signed off, or it's still very high risk because, I mean, the cinema operators are having financial troubles. So it'd be an idea to have an update.
If you, Dawn?
Yeah, so I genuinely, I would say that we need this risk because it is about the vibrancy in terms of the economy of the borough. That's what this risk is about. So this, I would say, needs to stay as it is because it's not just about town centres. It's around the economic activity across the borough. And that would include smaller industrial areas, some of our larger industrial areas, all of those kinds of things. So my view, Chair, would be this actually needs to stay as it is for the vibrancy side of it. In terms of the regeneration projects, that is a different consideration, and it's something that what we probably could do, which may be more beneficial, would be to bring update reports around the regeneration projects to this OSP. Because we could just simply give more information and there'd be more opportunity for discussion. That would include risks. It would include all of the kinds of things that Councillor Condacor has mentioned. And I'd be quite happy to arrange that and make sure that we bring something forward.
Okay, I believe that sounds a very good point. And looking at the chamber here, I think I've got a number of nods here in terms of that. So yes, that would be very beneficial. Timelines, etc., regarding specific details on the regeneration of both towns that we can review and see, and obviously scrutinise and make judgment thereon. That'd be very good. Thank you, Dawn. I believe Councillor Condacor has another question.
The other question is about, obviously, the massive rise of interest rates, which, I mean, obviously this risk register was produced quite a few weeks or months ago, and we've had a shock rise of interest rates and deterioration of the economy. And I think we don't know what's in our Treasury Management report that's going to Cabinet next week, but that might alarm us in terms of how much borrowing money is going to be going forward, both for ourselves and also obviously all the businesses in Nuneaton and Bedworth and Bulkington that need to borrow. So I think we need to look and see if that is something we need to put into the risk register as a separate thing, because obviously then we can mitigate by having brought forward borrowing or having a treasury management strategy. But I think interest rates and cash flow are just so important, because we were under borrowed, which was a good thing when interest rates were low. But I think interest rates could actually crucify some of our regeneration projects and some of our developers' projects.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Dawn, if you could respond.
So, Chair, I think in terms of this, the risk register as it stands, it's kind of, they're different, although that I accept they are intertwined, that they are different. So the economic vibrancy of the town and interest rates is obviously around the broader business base within the borough. And that's largely why we've erred on the side of caution and kept this risk as a red, because we are in such a fluid position in terms of the economy. Everybody will be aware of that. So it's a red risk. It's under constant scrutiny to see what is coming out. We are in constant contact with the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Small Businesses, the Growth Hub, with the LEP, to actually make sure that we understand. So that's aside from the regular contact that our economic development team have with local businesses, so that we're aware of where the concerns of local businesses are, and looking at how we can facilitate any kind of mitigation to support those businesses. So the interest rates in that view is really contained within this risk, and that's what the mitigation is around, is all of that partnership working with the Chamber of Commerce and others. The same with the UK SPF, so the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. One of the aims within that is to actually undertake a full review of business support services. So that is support services that businesses locally require to ensure that they maintain their viability and, as appropriate, are able to grow. So that is already contained within that risk. Again, I would say that what Councillor Condacor is looking at more at the council's finances when we're talking about how interest might affect our own borrowing and our own commitments. So I wonder whether that might actually fit better under kind of finance or audit OSP. I don't know whether Vicky would want to come in on that, but it's a different risk. This is about the vibrancy of the economy. So that's where that sits. But then as it relates to the council, the impact upon the council, I don't believe that should be in this risk, in risk R4, because that's not where it's focused towards.
Thank you for that, Dawn. Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Just so we have this on the record, Dawn, I respect you're not a qualified accountant, but you do have several decades experience in local government finance. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we cannot borrow in advance of projects, can we? For projects that, might be several years down the line, we cannot borrow in advance of those projects, can we? Because that's what I feel that a certain member of the council is trying to say we can do in order to try and get around the situation we're facing at the moment.
In terms of the actual accounting rules, Vicky will tell me if I'm wrong here. The issue would be that there's a prudential code, and we would be audited on that on an annual basis, so external audit. So trying to borrow for a scheme that you've not yet scoped out, you've not yet done all the financial viability and feasibility, I would believe that you would, as a council, we would get picked up by the external auditors, and we would breach the prudential code. So in short, I would say no, we wouldn't be able to do that. But as I say, Vicky, I'm not the accountant. If I've got it wrong, Vicky will tell me.
Thank you, Dawn. We have Councillor Condacor coming back with another question, I believe.
I was just going to clarify, because I'm being misrepresented. The council has been under-borrowed, which means it's actually not borrowed the money it needs to borrow, because it can finance it in the short term from cash flow. And when we sign a contract, say we sign a £16 million, I don't know how much it is, a £16 million contract to build a hotel, it's at what point do we borrow that money? We're obviously not allowed to borrow it years and years before we sign that contract, but also we could also not borrow it until the day we have to pay the money, in which case you're exposed to the interest rate going up in the year that the hotel takes to build. So that's why we need to see the Treasury Management Report to see actually we're actually operating at the right point, not illegally early, but not actually recklessly late.
I believe we have Vicky online as well. If you could answer that one for us, please, Vicky. It might be more in your field. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. You did a good job there. Yeah, so under the Prudential Code, yes, Dawn's absolutely correct. We shouldn't borrow in advance of need. Now, the strategy of the council, which was signed off in February, because that's bought every year for Treasury, would suggest that we tend to internally borrow. So where we have reserves and we have cash on hand, that's always been the approach we've taken. That's the approach we've continued to take. As it is currently for the project, we do have grant income which is due in. We also have Section 106 money, and we have cash in the bank. So what we're intending to do is continue down that road. There will be a revised Treasury strategy, because it has to be done every 12 months, again under the Prudential Code, which will come in February. That again will go to council for that to be scrutinised and reviewed, and that will govern our direction going forward based on where we are at that point in time. But at this stage, yes, there is a risk around interest rates without a doubt, but we're not intending to actually borrow any money currently. So that's not where we are at this point in time. And if we were in a position where we felt we may need to, we've got cash flow forecasts which go on for 2 years. So we're well aware where we are in terms of cash and what our expected balances are.
Thank you for that, Vicky. I hope that answers your questions, Councillor Condacor. Any further questions relating to the integrated report? Yes, Councillor Condacor.
There's been some questions to me about the accuracy of the market reports. I think one of the problems, particularly now we're giving some people annual payments and they can buy and we're doing a lot of incentive stuff. It might mean we're actually recording the market stalls there when actually the traders chose not to take up that week, because sometimes it looks really empty and yet we get these reports saying the market's full. So I think we need some sanity check of actually how many stalls actually decided to put out that week, rather than just how many are theoretically paid for. And I'm told in Bedworth Market some of the stalls weren't put back after some motor shows and things because they weren't needed. But I say it would be nice to actually have the physical number of stalls, just as a one-off, not every week, because obviously that's laborious, but some idea of actually if the market traders are using all the allocation they've actually paid for. Thank you, Chair.
I don't know if it's possible, Steve, to get that information for the next meeting. Obviously, I realise that the figures you deal with in the report are retrospective. As regards to what Councillor Condacor is asking, The detail won't be coming out for, I imagine, from the next quarter that we'll see it. So I'm not sure if you can bring it a little bit more up to date, shall we say, in terms of the actual uptake on days. I believe that's what Councillor Condacor is asking.
Yeah, I can make a note and get that information. Not sure whether I'll be able to get it for the second quarter, but I'll do my best because there's a tight timescale with the scheduling of the next round of meetings. I'll do my best.
Thank you, Steve. I have a question raised from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the request that Councillor Condacor has made, the problem with snapshot reports like that is it can give a very misleading picture in the event that the day that's randomly selected is an outlier rather than an indicative indication of take-up. And therefore we could put ourselves at risk of scrutinising and taking action about something that's based on an outlier because of the randomness of the selection of the date that's chosen. So we need to be very careful before we ask for this, because it could well give us a response that doesn't actually meet our requirements and leads us to take action that's not actually valid based on an average, which would be a far better way of looking at this thing, because that way we could have a trend rather than a single snapshot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for that point. Is there any other questions from the floor? I've just got a couple of small items, Steve, if you could look into this, not for now, but for the future, as it were. I've mentioned it before regarding the, obviously, the time of planning applications coming through the system. We appreciate that, obviously, the planning department is fairly depleted at this moment in time, so they are being pushed. But as I said before, we have a number of very extended outstanding planning applications that are skewing the report. And I have asked if we can take, I know you have to give a full report in terms of the total amount of outstanding, but if we could have a separate showing of, in reality, the time spent or the delay time on the majority of applications rather than taking out the two or three that extended. I don't know if that's possible at all, just to give us a clarification.
Yeah, I can do that, Chair. Take out the extraordinary ones, if you will, rather than the outliers. Yeah, I can liaise with the planning and get you two figures.
Thank you, I believe. Councillor Condacor.
If I may, Chair, I think it might be more useful actually to, if there's like there's one here, it's 1,200 and something days. It might actually be better to have a list of the extraordinary ones, because that's actually where things are going wrong, whether they're taking 70 days or 72 days. The ones that are taking 500 days or 1,000 days, and some never get determined as well, which is another worrying thing. There's been some applications in my ward where there's been developers doing things they shouldn't. They put an application in and then they just withdraw it, or it just ends up never being determined. So I think we do need to look at outliers, not just say the outliers are mucking the stats up. So as a one-off, maybe just a list of outliers.
Yeah, my suggestion wasn't to take those out. It was just to differentiate between the outliers and the ones that fall within the normal sort of slightly extended timescales. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor relating to the report? Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, officers, for attending the meeting. Appreciate that. Thanking you.
Thank you, Chair.
Moving on. We have item number 9, forward plan, as listed in the agenda as of page 70 onwards. This is for information. It shows obviously shows the decisions to be made and relevant OSPs accordingly and dates and so on. Any questions? Councillor Condacor.
I'm very alarmed that the demolition of Civic Hall and regeneration of Bedworth wasn't on the forward plan, because we should actually have known it was happening. We might not have known exactly when it was happening because of various things going on, but there's been press releases put out and some diagrams of what shows the new multi-storey car park library. And I think that should have been on the forward plan legally, because we are taking it, I believe, to Cabinet next week. It falls between two OSPs, because obviously the Civic Hall is in another place, but the Regeneration of Bedworth clearly sits with this OSP. And we've released to the council these photo montages in Councillor Wilson's video, and on the press release of these maps with purple bits, and yet we've got no scrutiny of it. So I have put work item form in, and I did ask if it could be considered as an urgent item, because obviously once we start demolishing things, scrutiny is not much use. So I don't know how you want to take that, but we do need to have things properly put on the forward plan, so that we as an OSP could put work forms in well ahead of things happening. And I don't know if it's yourself or one of the other chairs will sign it off as urgent matter going to Cabinet, but I don't know if that is not for calling or not, the Bedworth Regeneration. But it is an area we do need to know more about, not just going to this anonymous Bedworth Working Party. I don't know if any of the members here are members of the Bedworth Working Party, because we don't know who the members of it are. But I say it is something that should be in the public domain. And as much as people might moan at members of the public coming with conspiracy theories, the best way to stop that is actually to have this is the working party and it on the forward plan, etc. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacott. Obviously, we're moving this forward from any other business, which it was originally put down as. Okay, so yes, I've taken note, but I've also taken advice. Because obviously it hasn't gone to Cabinet as yet, as you're fully aware. Okay, we have nothing specific to scrutinise against. And that is the purpose of this committee, to scrutinise. But at the moment, because it hasn't gone to Cabinet, we're not in that position to do so. Councillor Evans.
Councillor Condacott asks about the legality of the press release, because the work hasn't been included on the work, so the work programme, the forward programme, sorry. Councillor Condacott will know, and this is acutely in the public domain, that transforming Bedworth as a working party was on the forward plan for many, many, many months. And full council took a decision to delegate the responsibilities and oversight of that work to the Transforming Bedworth Working Party. The membership is in the public domain. It was agreed at full council, so it's in council minutes, as I understand it. But for people watching at home, I'm happy to go through the membership. It's myself, Councillor Wilson as the portfolio holder chairs the group. Councillor Coventry Morton is on the panel. Councillor Brian Walmsley as the councillor for the town centre is on the panel. Councillor Peter Gilbert is on the panel from Warwickshire County Council, as is Councillor Sue Markham from her county council, although she is a borough councillor as well. Disappointingly, the opposition at Warwickshire County Council have a seat on that panel and have decided effectively not to send anyone to it. So, as for being blamed about things being done in the secret, they're not secret at all. It's a group that publishes minutes, which, as far as I'm aware, you're more than welcome to look at. But perhaps you need to discuss that with your opposition groups at Warwickshire County Council, because you can send a member, but you don't.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Condacott.
I did not question the legality of putting a press release out. I questioned the legality of it going to Cabinet next Wednesday, when it hadn't actually been put in the forward plan, when it was obviously known that the regeneration was happening. So it wasn't the press release that's a problem, it's a decision at short notice and urgency. And I'm very happy with the offer to see the minutes. So I will, maybe if the committee services could send us the minutes to all members, and then we can decide if there's anything we need to scrutinise. Thank you.
Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm looking at transforming Nuneaton and transforming Bedworth governance arrangements. I take it that does not include the statement of closing the Civic Hall that's going to Cabinet next week.
I'm not in a position to answer that, but Councillor Evans, I believe, can speak on that point.
Yeah, that item specifically, because it was brought up at the last Transforming Bedworth meeting, it's about effectively putting into more, making it more formal as to who the members are, who is allowed to attend those meetings, which authority will take responsibility for what influence do people like the Chamber of Commerce, the LEP, have in those discussions.
Yes, Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the question of closing the Civic Hall will not be on Cabinet papers next week, because as Councillor Evans has said, it is transforming Nuneaton and Bedworth governance arrangements.
Sorry, Councillor Evans, can you clarify again? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, a report is coming to Cabinet next week to discuss the decision of the NHS to pull out of the Bedworth Civic Hall.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other questions for that? I'm quite happy to bring in an initial working party, forward plan work programme in future as required with specific influence on this subject matter. I have no issue with that, if deemed necessary, subject to, obviously, the Cabinet meeting of next week. Are we happy with that? Agreed? I thank you. Yes, we'll do that. Any further questions regarding that item? No? Okay, thank you. Item 10, working programme. Last page on the agenda. We have the reports, obviously, that will come before us over the next period. Is there any other report required that we can add to? Councillor Condacor?
We did suggest we'd ask Jonathan Whiting some bits about various town centre footfalls, etc. And we've also got, obviously, the Christmas period coming up. So it might be worth actually inviting him to the next meeting on the 8th of December, if that's going to be on the 8th, to actually both do those issues and also give us a bit of a briefing or something on the arrangements over Christmas, and that'd be useful, because there's always arguments over Christmas markets and all that stuff in the two towns. I think he had a lot of knowledge, and I don't think we've had him in front of the Regeneration Committee so far.
Happy to take that on board. If we make an invitation, please, for the next meeting, and put that as an agenda item and a report. That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Point taken. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We have one other item. In addition, obviously, we've spoken about Councillor Condacor's questions. So we have another item here, which is the report from Jackie Padbury. She unfortunately can't be with us. I believe you have it in front of you. Report regarding the National Planning Policy Framework Report. We all had opportunity to read it. Okay. Any specific questions attaining to it? Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, something interesting did happen yesterday, and I don't know if this was prepared after, but there was a planning inspectorate hearing in this chamber yesterday with respect to Cartwrights versus the council about a planning application in Galley Common. The legal team representing AR Cartwrights were trying to claim that the council's 5-year housing land supply was 4.77 years. So I'd be interested in, now obviously we don't know what the judgment of the planning inspectorate is yet, and as I understand it, there were several organisations, including CPRE, who were attending, who were effectively agreeing with our own figures, which are reflected in this briefing note. But it would be interested if the planning department could possibly give their opinion on the legal representations made by AR Cartwrights yesterday.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. If we could arrange for that to occur, appreciate that. Obviously, there's quite a drift from what we've been told here on the land supply, as you quite rightly say. Quite a variance. Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, and in tied in with those arguments is the Coventry overflow, which keeps going round, and the 40,000 population area in Coventry when they actually did a proper census. And there was actually a population in Warwickshire in the opposite direction of about 8,000. So obviously, during the pandemic, quite a few people, particularly students, were actually moving into Warwickshire, not actually going to their digs in Coventry. So it would be useful to actually have the Jackie Padbury maybe here to go through these issues, because the developers always cherry pick. So they may be picking bits of what's happened during the pandemic and ignoring the fact that actually Coventry really emptied out during the pandemic, and its population was already misestimated. Can I also, on the annual monitoring, mention we always forget industrial and commercial floor space, and all this planning stuff isn't just housing, so maybe we should have a note on where we are with new floor space, etc. Thank you.
I'm sure we can take that on board. Likewise, Councillor Condacor, thank you very much indeed. That. Any other questions from the floor relating to the briefing notes? Any other points of question? Any other business? Okay. I thank you all for your attendance. Appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. And the meeting is now closed. Thank you.